Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. If you not do these things, I have to assume that you are not a big tipper. On today's episode, we will be not concluding, my mistake. We'll be going through the next 4 on the top 25 of the last 25 butterfly moments in sports. Have a nice little 4-pack for you guys later in the episode. But first, what we got to talk about is we got to start talking about that copium. Now, you guys might be wondering, what is copium, right? It's a drug a lot of sports fans take anytime they can get a little bit of hope going forward, right? Because frankly, the reason why we all love sports and love watching it is because this shit isn't scripted, right? We don't exactly know what's going to happen. We don't know where these things are going to take place. But there's always that feeling deep down inside that while everyone's telling you one thing, you still have that ability to believe. And it's that unwavering belief. That's what we call with copium, right? And that is what we have seen so far with one Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders got his first NFL start of his career, albeit in the preseason, going against the Carolina Panthers, and he played really well. While I did not watch the game because I have a life, but from everything you saw, from the clips that you were able to see, if you go back and watch the first half that essentially he played, got through 2 touchdown passes, but like you got the ball out on time, and frankly played well. And this is the part of the story where I have to invoke the name that I feel like if you were around during this time, it was a very scary time for you, right? As a kid growing up in like the 2000s, 2010s, one of the things that I used to do religiously was to turn on First Take. I used to listen to Skip and Stephen A. Smith go at it for 2 hours consistently. Like, I remember when that thing was cold pizza before Stephen A. even got there, and there was different rotating guests for Skip to talk about. But one of the main things, and honestly, I think one of the things that made the show as popular as it became was the topic of Tim Tebow. I don't know Tim Tebow's government name. I was going to call him Timothy. He might not be a Timothy, but it was one Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is roughly maybe one of the 5 best college football players of all, not even necessarily all time, but definitely the last 20 seasons. He almost won 2 Heisman trophies. He did win 1. He helped lead a team to 2 national championships. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the last time Florida even made it. The last time they won the SEC championship, Tim Tebow was on the team. They made it a couple years ago, but I remember they lost to Bama. But either way, Tim Tebow was a Hall of Fame college quarterback. Tim Tebow might have been legitimately the worst player to ever play the quarterback position in the NFL. Like, Tim Tebow was dog shit, bad. But Tebow, through, I would argue, mostly Skip Bayless, created this like cult-like persona where any other stats that you would put up there and say that this is what this player did, you would be like, he played like trash. And yet they would win the game and somehow he would get credit for that wins, right? It's the same thing when I went through last week with Tom Brady, how many playoff losses he had at home. He had 3. His very first one was against Joe Flacco and the Baltimore Ravens, and they got dog walked in that game. Joe Flacco threw the ball 10 times and completed 4 passes. Like, he wasn't good at all in that game. But I mean, it gets put on his ledger, right? That's the kind of the overratedness of the quarterback stat. But the reason why I bring this all up is that we have now gotten to the point with Shedeur where it really don't matter what people say. We are just in the vibes era, right? And no amount of stats or no amount of talking can get people to move off their Porsche. The amount of, I think, like, the debate is over discussion that you see online after a half in a preseason game where you're not showing anything in this preseason game is hilarious, right? Now, to be fair to him, there could be a comparison to the idea of like a Dak Prescott, right? Dak Prescott was a 4th round pick coming out. He ended up starting most of that preseason because Tony Romo got hurt. He broke his back, I believe. And then he played, and he ended up winning. I'm pretty sure he won Rookie of the Year, and he has it, he's been the starter ever since that time in Dallas, right? The difference, I would argue, is that Cowboys team was really talented, definitely a lot more talented than what the Browns are projected to be. And it still remains to be seen how good Shador can be. Now, I think everyone wants to just do these victory laps because, again, Copium, you're trying to have your own biases confirmed, right? I would just ask people to do something that I know we don't do a lot in sports. Keep a cool booty, as Kendrick Perkins would say. You just got to let this thing play out because he'll get his time to play, right? Like, I ultimately think what will happen is that one of Pickett or Gabriel, I would assume Gabriel, is going to get cut and will not be re-signed, and he will not be on the Cleveland Browns at one point. I think what will happen is the other quarterback, whether it's Gabriel or Pickett, I would assume it's going to be Pickett, will be the practice squad quarterback. Now, maybe Pickett's like, I don't really want to do that. Like, just cut me and let me see if I can join another team. I don't really want to play practice squad for you guys. Either way, one of those two guys will not be on the Browns anymore. And I think the other one will be the practice squad quarterback. And I think Shador will be the most talked about, looked at, put on TV quarterback that we will have really since Tebow in the backup quarterback spot. Now, I think the difference between what happened with Tebow in Denver versus what happened in what's potentially happening right now in Cleveland is Kyle Orton, you can clearly tell, was feeling that pressure, right? Kyle Orton, while he was a veteran quarterback, was definitely towards the end of his career. He was still trying to hang on. Kyle Orton was a good quarterback, but wasn't necessarily a guy that I think could handle that type of like media scrutiny that was coming his way. Flacco don't care. And I think the good thing about Flacco being the starting quarterback is Flacco know he not playing all 17 games. He knows that. Either the team gonna stink and he gonna get benched or his ass gonna get hurt. Okay? But Flacco's there for a good time, not a long time. So I actually don't think this actually has any pressure on Flacco at all. Like, I don't think he's going to be, like my man was dealing with Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs in his locker room. You think some pressure online is going to get him shook? Like, he'll be fine. And I think it'll be a good way to see how this goes. But frankly, for Cleveland and for Shador specifically, I do want this to be the best for him, right? Because ultimately, if you look at a lot of ways that the NFL goes, it is not about how you get in, right? Someone was showing the stat. I was listening to a Bill Simmons podcast, one of his guests. I apologize for remembering his name. But they were saying that of half of the first round picks in each draft don't play. Now, some of that could be quarterback play, injuries could happen. Like, it's not necessarily a one-to-one with everything, but most of those guys, they say they don't even play. So for Shador, for himself to have the opportunity to go out there to play, I think is something that he clearly saw his chance and he didn't miss his moment. And that's the biggest thing going for him. But let's not, put his ass in can, right now, right? He's got a couple more preseason games to go for. It looks like pretty clearly he'll make the team, as we said before. But this is going to be the most annoying story for the 2025-2026 NFL season. It's already written. This is the how long can Flacco essentially keep off Shador Sanders from making his NFL start when the games really, really, really matter. But as you guys know, as I try to tell you all the time, the last thing on this earth I'm ever going to be is a hater. And so Shedeur if someone plays well, if I don't necessarily see it or agree with it, I'm always going to give guys flowers when it happens. So credit to Shedeur for having a very, 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 very good start to his campaign. Also, Jackson Dart played really well, but I know no one really cares about that part too because it doesn't hit the vibe, saying differently. Okay, on to the rest of our list. We are, as you guys know, if you guys are your first time here, we are doing the top 25 butterfly moments of the last 25 seasons. If you want to go back and listen to the first dropping of this that we dropped last week, Thursday, I suggest you go back. It's a very good list. A lot of time spent on these. And these things, as I said last week, are basically based on moments that happened that altered either a player's career, a franchise's career, or changed something in the actual sports landscape for that sport in itself. All right. We left off with number 22, Tom Brady's last game at Foxborough. Now we're on to number 21, which will be Donald Sterling and TMZ tapes. Yes, this took place on a very weird spring day, April 25th, 2014. TMZ, there's another conversation about where TMZ went. I would argue this was TMZ's second biggest moment of their time. The first being reporting that Michael Jackson had passed away. But this was essentially TMZ saying, we're getting audio clips, voicemails of Donald Sterling saying lewd and racist comments towards Magic Johnson and just NBA players in general on tape, and essentially completely altering the course of the franchise that he owned, which was the Los Angeles Clippers. If you guys do have time, I do recommend listening to Ramona Shelbur's 30 for 30 about the Clippers and just how the whole thing kind of went. There's a lot of twists and turns that story takes that I think is actually very fascinating if you want to do it. But obviously the thing that made it most impactful, it's really, I would argue, the first and probably will be the last time that an owner was forced to sell his team due to scandal. Mostly scandal, right? I know a lot of people want to say Robert Sarver sold the team. Robert Sarver sold the team because he was sorry. That man had no money. Okay, so this is not the same as what Sarver went through. Like, if you guys remember, if you guys don't remember, they almost were talking about forfeiting the game, and the fact that, the players came out and they had the reverse. They put their jerseys inside out, not the jerseys, just warm-ups were inside out. They took them all off and threw them in the middle of the court. And what did that mean? And then essentially Doc Rivers is essentially running the Clippers at the time. They were playing the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs that year. It was a very just odd kind of moment. And the thing that even made it crazier was Adam Silver just got the commissioner job that season too. That was his first season as NBA commissioner from David Stern, who went on to pass away a little later after this. But the fact that this is his first major moment, and he actually had to be able to get one of the movers, shakers in his league, but he had to get this dude out the paint, and that happening completely allowed the Clippers, in my opinion, to become an actual functional basketball team. Well, you can still argue they are like the little stepchilds of Los Angeles and people will not care about them. You cannot say that they do not have their own type of culture or type of vibe to them. I think one of the great things about having Steve Ballmer as their owner is you've seen that they've been able to carve out their own little space for it. They finally have their own arena, which has a very unique style to it. It's a very beautiful arena from everything that you see. And also the fact that they went from a racist owner who was ass as an owner to Ballmer, who I'm pretty sure since he's bought the team, I don't think they've missed the playoffs. They might have missed the playoffs maybe one time. And I think it was the COVID season where Kawhi missed the whole season. I think Paul George had COVID at one point and they missed from being in the play-in or something like that, right? But since he be the guy this is the most successful tenure that any Clippers owners ever had, speaks volumes to where it was. So crazy impact, crazy ass time during that. Shout out to Stefano. What's her name? Hopefully, I'm not butchering her name right now. But that was definitely a moment where things could have went real different where it is, and I definitely think that this will be the last time we will see this type of situation where an owner is forced to sell his team because of some type of scandal. All right, next, staying in the NBA, the 20th butterfly moment of the last 25 seasons we have is the new NBA CBA. Yes, this went into effect officially on July 1st, 2023. The NBA implemented a new collective bargaining agreement. This is the first time that the NBA came into with something called aprons. And we can go into deeper discussions about aprons, but I know some people don't necessarily love all that math talk. But the reason why this is important is because twofold. You see how the NBA is essentially copying a lot of the models of what the NFL has done and has essentially created a hard cap. Now, it is not a hard cap in the sense of the NFL where you cannot get over this cap. Like, this is the number that is set. You cannot spend more than this money. Versus the NBA saying, we will make it painfully obvious for you that you should not do this if you go over this line. And the idea of how the NFL has infiltrated the NBA has seen with the contracts. We have seen more and more shorter deals than we have before in recent NBA history, and a lot less guaranteed money, which was always the thing that always separated the NBA and the NFL, was the fact that it didn't matter, what you did. By and large part, you would get a guaranteed contract from the NBA. You would get all your money. Obviously, if you don't break any of the legal ramifications on your contract. But if you sign a 4-year, $60 million deal, you got all $60 million. By and large part, getting something like a team option was very rare. It wasn't something that always happened every single time. And even if you got team options on deals, you at least got the full first year guarantee potentially. Now you're seeing a lot more partial guarantees or like guaranteed triggers or team options on the back ends of some of these deals. It has been a very, 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 in my opinion, poor management by the NBA PA on what has actually happened with the teams or with the players rather, because the money's still trickling to the owners. And the idea of this was that the middle class of the NBA would be kind of reset, right? And I can understand that logic, right? Just because a guy is essentially expected to get max money, right, or should be, considered to be a max player, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that, right? But what the players gave up in the sense of the NBA got the tools, or the owners got tools now to use to essentially put their thumbs more on the scale. The players didn't get anything, It's not as like they got like longer contracts or longer time off or the schedule change. Like, I'm still struggling to this day to know why the NBA PA agreed to this CBA, because I see exactly why the NBA owners wanted to get this done, because owners can't control their spending like most people, can't budget their money. And now they have actual, team things that they can now convince fans to say like, oh, we shouldn't do these things because of the CBA and how it impacts you and how things go forward. So it definitely hasn't been fully fleshed out. The idea of super teams is definitely something that kind of is now over per se with this. You can argue that the Oklahoma City Thunder are skirting that rule right now. Are they a super team? I think that comes down to how many championships you win. I think how the three players that they have on their team, while one is a elite player and two are at right now considered to be very, very good players. We don't know how good those other two players are going to get yet, right? When you think about the super teams, you're thinking about two guys at least that were either MVP candidates or had won MVPs, right? The Stephen KD Warriors, the LeBron, and you can argue the Kyrie Cavaliers. That's probably the more comparable of them, even though I would argue that as of right now, Kyrie Irving was a better player than Jalen Williams is. Or even him on the Heat, or if you think of, or LeBron James rather on the Heat, the Celtics with Pierce, Garnett, and Ray Allen. This is not what Oklahoma City is, right? Now the guys are coming up, and we'll see, like I said, how this kind of goes forward because they have all the three best players locked into long-term deals. But this is now become like, I think, more commonplace in sports, and I think the bigger thing, the next starting point of like, why did this actually make the list is I'll be very interested to see how baseball kind of pushes through. Because let's be clear, if baseball gets a hard cap or starts having a salary cap, those contracts are going down, right? And you're not going to have the amount of guaranteed money that you have in baseball that you do have in the other sports. And as you saw before, as we've heard with Bryce Harper allegedly cussing out Rob Manfred, that's something that I think that will cause, what do you know, another strike. Just when baseball's getting its leggings right back going. Gotta love it. Okay, next up, number 19 on our list. Number 19 on our list is going to be the NFL CTA lawsuit. Okay? Yes, this was settled in 2015. The payments started on January 2nd, 2017. But if you are familiar with what this is the NFL settled a class action lawsuit with former players for about $1 billion, right? Providing compensation for brain injuries, including CTE, linked to concussions that were sustained during their career. You can see the whole breakdown of who got what and how much was actually paid out. But this was the first time that I think people even knew, or kind of the conversation about what CTE even was kind of started. We had several players, unfortunately, commit very heinous crimes, being somewhat linked to CTE, whether it was self-harming themselves or committing violent acts and then committing some self-harm. The Will Smith movie Concussion was based largely on this. And it was a true watershed moment, I think, in American culture, because there was a real point where people were like, I'm not allowing my son to play football anymore. And I think through, and the reason why this definitely made the list is just because football is just not the same game that it was before. I mean, even when I was in high school, the idea of going across the middle was a very life-altering choice. Like, you could have gotten jacked up, right? If you want to go back, the video is going to be so grainy to try and find this, but the NFL would have like their montage a long time of like hardest hits, right? Where it would go through and you can see guys going across the middle. I mean, they called Ed Reed a headhunter for a while. And that was like one of the main kind of claims to fame of being a strong safety, was you protected the middle of the field and you made wide receivers terrified. The reason why this had such an impact on not only off the field in terms of like parents and deciding, do I want my kid to play football and things like that, but for everyone on the field, right? I would argue that the amount of stats that are being put up now, it is way, 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 way easier to play football as far as being a quarterback or a wide receiver today than it was 12 years ago. Because not only do you not have any fear of going across the middle of a guy hitting you, you know that you can't get hit in certain parts of your body anymore. And that's just going to change the way that you play the sport. And the amount of stats that you're just able to accumulate. And so you're going to see a lot of wide receivers. I think you're seeing a lot of wide receivers now. If they start playing long enough, you're going to be like, guys are having 10,000 yard seasons. And before, 10,000 yards was just like a automatic, you're in the Hall of Fame, no doubt. But it'll be interesting to see going forward is like, is that still the same standard of which NFL players get in and like your legacy being changed, or is there going to be something different? Same thing with quarterbacks. A lot of guys are throwing for so many more yards now than they ever did. You know, like I don't think Eli Manning is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL, but I'm pretty sure when he retired, he was 10th all time in passing yards. It's like he played so, well, not his whole career, but a big chunk of the back half of his career started when he was able to get some of these numbers going forward. Tom Brady played for so much longer. He even spoke about that it's real ironic that he's talking now when he's the main benefit of half these rule changes, that their stats were able to just get so supercharged because of a lot of this stuff. So I think the idea of CTE has just been so in our lives now that we just know that it is a very real thing, and it's very much acceptable to guys who, if you get a lot of head traumas. But I think the rule changes of what happened because of this lawsuit, I think, is the one thing that's going to was the overall, landmark change of this court decision of what happened actually on the field. Last one that we have up for you guys for today is going to be number 18. We're going to have Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. Okay. This was supposed to be, as believed to be, the fight of the decade. Okay. This fight took place May 2nd. I don't know if that was probably Cinco de Mayo-ish weekend back then. But it was definitely the most hyped fight in it before. And this thing was leading talk. Everyone was talking about this fight. And that was the first time, I think, in my lifetime that I was at least cognizant of what a boxing match was, right? When it was talked about everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was going to watch this fight. It was just leading every single kind of conversation on Sports Talk Radio. First Take talked about this all the time. It was a big, 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 big fight. And I think the biggest thing about it was fighting is the way that fights make money is from casual fans. That's not saying anything super crazy. That's how normal sports work. But that shit is boring as hell unless you make it poppin'. And the fact that this fight was essentially talked about for a few years, like these guys were talking about fighting in like 2008. And it took so long for them to fight. The fight was terrible. And I believe it was the true end of boxing getting to that height again. We have not seen any fight talked about the same way that fight was talked about. We've had fights that have been hyped up. Anthony Joshua had a lot of fights that was really hyped up. Not really good for him. But this was considered to be the fight that you wanted to see, that you were going to be talking about for the rest of your life. And it just didn't happen. And I really just think boxing missed its moment to kind of usher in a new generation of fans. And I think that this was their biggest missed opportunity. And I think in part it left the door open. I'm not saying it caused it, but for some place like the UFC to come in and make their way. Manny Pacquiao lost this fight. Mayweather won on a unanimous decision. But it didn't even matter who won or lost that fight. We lost the fight. That's who lost the fight. And it was just such a whimper to something that was so hyped and believed to be such a moment. And it truly it went away. And I don't think boxing can recover in any type of way. And I don't think it should recover. It's just been something that, while it will always have its pockets in certain parts of the world, it will unfortunately just never get to the level of promise that it had way back then. All right. That is number 21 to 18. All right. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Like I said, like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. And we'll be back with you guys later this week. So Thank you guys for listening to the pod. Peace out.